Hey everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Snapchat. I'm joined today by none other than Cozy Snap. Cozy, I got an interesting point of discussion to start us off on today's Snapchat. Now we've got two cards we're going to be talking about today, Skaar and Caiera, then we're getting into our Snapchat mailbag. But before that, Cozy, I think there's an important conversation we'll have just to get us started here. Skaar and Caiera have come out in the same week. Now this is the first time in Marvel Snap's history that they're releasing two cards at once. Now my question to you is this straight up inflation in Marvel Snap? Are we seeing resources being stretched ever thinner? Or do you think it's just more excitement to have more cards released at the same time? What are your general thoughts on releasing two cards in 1 week?
Oh, that's tough because I try to separate myself as a content creator and then as like a player. And funny enough, like, yeah, as a content creator, it's like more content's great. It's also stressful. There's like a lot to happen. And I think we said this on my side where it's like, these two were tame, but if we get two drastically game-altering cards, there's a lot going on, right? And then we already have OTAs and whatnot. Ultimately, I land on excitement. I think it's good. I think, as long as we get more... It's not like if we get more cards like Martyr and Hercules, but that definitely makes it easier too, where it's like, there's weeks that you can pass. There's archetype-defining cards, things like that. I land on the camp of pumped. I always like new cards, more cards, and in fact, I think that two cards can really change up the meta, whereas like this last month has been very stale. We're like waiting on the patch, so I think I land in that case, but it does make you be more selective, and so hopefully in like leagues that are coming out or whatever, we get collector whatever, right? The economy changes just a touch.
Yeah, I would agree there. Like, obviously, it generates a lot of excitement. I'm excited for it. I love discussing this game, playing this game. I love experimenting with new cards. But for me, I get concerned about the economy, as you mentioned. Yeah. Not the general economy of, like, North America. I'm referring specifically to the Marvel Snap economy. I'm concerned that, like, now there's more things to acquire, but the resources haven't changed. So if we're going to have more cards in a given month, perhaps we need to give players more tokens, or we need to give players more gold, or we need to give players something to accommodate the requirement to having more cards being released. I feel like we do this. I feel like we tend to be good, positive voices for the free-to-play community. And when I see this, I see it as like a hurdle for them to have to overcome. Because if they want to stay competitive in the game, or they want to stay on top of things, then suddenly planning becomes even more important. Planning becomes even more difficult because data mines change and all this stuff change. Schedules change. Spotlight keys are hard to acquire. So, but at the same time though, maybe in these leagues, maybe spotlight keys are part of the reward system. Maybe in the new revamped albums, we get more spotlight keys, right? Because now we do have spotlight keys in the existing ones. I just wanted to start this conversation off by saying, yes, there's excitement for the 2-card release, but there's also opportunities to improve. And I think that we need to kind of shine a light on the potential anxieties that could be kind of placed upon the player base. Yeah,
I think you nailed it, right? Albums, the leagues, new game modes will have new rewards. As long as they keep the economy like kind of stable, I think it is ultimately good. But you know what I want to see too is less FOMO cards. Like Blob's a good example. Like you have to get Blob. Miss Marvel, these are cards like you have to get. Whereas if they're very archetype, I mean, Hercules is kind of trash, but at least we can like say it's move focus. If they have cards that are more targeted per archetype, then I think it's okay more so because then you target the card and the archetypes that you like, and it doesn't feel like you're missing this plug and play card that will be in every meta deck moving forward. You just target the weeks you want, but lately we've had a lot of just kind of catch-all things, right? So it's kind of like two birds, one stone.
Absolutely. You're referring to cards like Meek, for instance, is going to be a de-stressor for some people. If they don't play discard, just don't get Meek, right? Regardless, a very interesting start to the conversation here today. We're going to be discussing Skaar first off. Now, Skaar has been a really interesting release in Marvel Snap. I actually was really excited for Skaar. A 6/11 that gets discounted by 2 for every 10 power card you have on the board. Not in your hand, not in your deck, on the board, which is a very important mechanic there. Ultimately, I think it was pretty fun. A good card. Maybe personally underwhelmed a little bit, but I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts, Cozy.
Yeah, so I think Skaar in general, we kind of thought he was going to be like a She-Hulk 2.0, where his flexibility is like a little bit less than that overall. What I think it does, though, is it adds to the cheating big things out archetype, kind of, right? Like, what did we see a big surge in? Lockjaw. We even had, Jubilee getting played more. These other cards, I can just get these cards out earlier. He kind of needs magic to really excel, and or one other card that can extremely help his cheating scenario. I don't know. I think he's kind of getting crapped on a little bit too hard. I think I gave him, I think he's like a 3.5 star. I put on competitiveness, something like that in my most recent review, which feels about right. I think his better days are ahead in the sense of like what other cards we can get out for 10 power, things like that. But also, he has that huge glaring weakness of Shang-Chi. So it now feels like you need to have Caiera and Magic. But that makes sense. You're going to cheat out a lot of huge cards, right? You're going to be able to do some crazy things. And, you know, I think there are more and more spicy decks being made up with him. I think he was a good addition to Snap, I think.
Oh, I agree 100%, but I think what's missing is an alternative ramp option that's not like Electro, because Electro obviously does not work with Skaar. So people are going the ramp options, the cheat options with stuff like Lockjaw, which I actually thought was pretty successful. And I mean, we're kind of poo-pooing on the card a little bit, but honestly, it's doing well. It's running a 57% win rate, a positive 0.61 cube rate, at a 6% meta share. Now, it's notable that these statistics are still relatively early, and a 6% meta share is far below that of, say, something like a Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel captured the attention of people rather quickly, whereas Skaar, I think, has been something people have been a little more tentative of. Now, what I will say as well is that the deck that I've been running is a brew of mine that I absolutely loved. It's currently running a 57% win rate. You see it on the screen there, but it's Black Knight, Blade, Zabu, Lockjaw. You got Lady Sif, Jubilee, Ghost Rider, Shang-Chi, Dr. Octopus, Skaar, Magneto, and then the Infinite. Now, this is a Black Knight style value deck. What I loved about it, though, is you could have all these different attack vectors where, you know, you play Blade into the Lockjaw, you discard your Infinite, you get the massive Ebony Blade, which, honestly, I am such a believer in the new Black Knight cozy. This deck has been so fun to play, and I don't care what anyone says, Dr. Octopus is such a troll card. You pull their stuff out of their hand, all these ongoing cards drop into the wrong location. Oh, wait, what was that? Is that an Orca? Punch him out on turn 6 or whatever. Beautiful, beautiful. Really had a lot of fun with this deck, and I gotta tell you, I really appreciated that Skaar kind of opened up the possibility to bring Lockjaw back, but at the same time, sometimes I feel like Scar's even cuttable from this list, which brings its star rating down for me.
Yeah, so like Skaar ultimately can be cuttable from a lot of these lists. Like, oh wait, I'd rather have this card instead. First of all, yeah, Black Knight, one of the best cards right now. I think whenever his update happened, we were like, dude, this guy's about to be cracked. I think the biggest difference in Snap from people that play a lot or casually, if you play casually, you play the cards you like, you maybe try to pay attention to the better cards. When you're playing competitively, you're playing cards to counter what you're seeing out there in the meta, right? So a good example of this is what I love that you had there. Doc Ock, right? Doc Ock, if you're playing Skaar, is like the must-play card right now because you're getting 10 power. He's only 5 energy. There's only a couple of 5 ones. But on top of that, everybody's playing these big cards, right? Everybody's got these big cards or tech cards. So the disruption is major. Just an incredible, great card to be having at the moment. Love that deck. Enjoy Black Knight. And Skaar, he is flexible. He does have a lot of different brews that he can fit in. I still don't think we have the perfect brew for him yet, but we're getting close.
Oh, I agree 100%. I don't think the best Skaar deck has been figured out yet.
No.
100%. When you're working with energy cheat or mana cheat or cost reduction or whatever the hell you want to call it, there's always going to be an incredibly powerful synergy, and I don't think we're there yet. We're not seeing a lot of Mobius and Mobius out there because I don't think Skaar has shaken things up quite yet enough. But again, maybe in March, there's a new ramp option that comes out that suddenly Skaar makes perfect sense, right? So I do think that the light at the end of the tunnel for Skaar is I think that if you're buying the Season Pass, you're getting really good value as it is. The Season Pass as a whole tends to be very strong value. And ultimately, I think that it's gonna be fine. And you know what? Maybe this is a card that gets buffed. Maybe it goes to a 6/12. Listen, 6/12 Hulk is not really what you're looking for. You're not playing no vanilla 6/12 Hulk. So the numbers are here that can be improved. I don't think it ever kind of discounts itself by 3. I don't think that's the dial that gets turned. You're probably going to see a power change. I don't think you see an energy change. But ultimately, I don't know. I like the card ultimately.
Yeah, I don't even think he needs change. Like, I think ultimately there's going to be cards that are 4 costs, that are cheaper, that can be built up. Like right now, I can give you a deck, but I think what I want to just bring up more so is like a different way of thinking with him, right? Like I've been trying to make Hulkbuster work and Forge work. Forge with Gladiator, Hulkbuster with something like Lizard, whatever it might be, even Wave. Then you have a chance to use the Wave for ramping, but then you also have a way to get another 10. And you're trying to get him down to 2 costs effectively and not use magic. That's a whole nother, discussion. But I think there's a lot of interesting ways to play and utilize Skaar that people aren't exactly trying or testing. And so that's been a big deck that I've been doing myself. On top of that, everything's about Caiera. I think Atuma is having a much more play. There's going to be cards that come out. We're going to see it with Obsidian Coal that comes out and helps Thanos. Thanos is probably one of his best right now because Thanos is just loving Lockjaw at the moment, and it feels really good. But then also Black Knight's doing good because you got the Ghost Rider. You have other ways to cheat out these cards. I think we're getting there. And I think we're not quite there for Skaar yet. But ultimately, man, he checks the boxes that I like in a card. I would say semi-underwhelming, but not like Sebastian Shaw limiting.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well to have 2 months in a row where the cards are slightly underperforming, but it also feels a little good that like maybe this is a little bit of like a breather for players that are like just trying to keep up with all these insane releases of Miss Marvel and etc. Right? So these fair cards I'll never complain about. And again, if Skaar needs to be improved or changed, there's plenty of dials here to work on. Now, Caiera we came in really hot on. I went absolutely insane last week, giving her 5 stars. And you know what? I'm not going to say I'm wrong. I think Caiera has found its place in the meta. Perhaps 4.5, 4 stars. Maybe it didn't quite hit that 5-star range. It didn't disrupt the way Blob did. It didn't do what Miss Marvel did, but damn do I think this is a fantastic card. 59% win rate, a positive cube rate of 0.70, 7% meta share, and climbing very rapidly. I don't know, Cozy. I love this card. I think it's great. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, I love it. I love Caiera. I would say that I think we were right on her competitiveness, but where I was wrong was maybe a touch of her flexibility. Like, she does have, like, certain decks to kind of work in, which I think is good because then it works with armor. I don't think she's going to get nerfed really all that much. I don't. I think you don't make her the one lane, obviously, because armor. They both have their place. But I gotta say, man, I don't know what I love it more for. I don't know if I love that 6-cost cards are protected or that 1-cost cards are protected. And the fact that it's either or, both feel so good. Now, obviously, Thanos is in such a good place because he utilizes both of these. But, dude, Zoo decks are crazy cool to do. You can protect Quinjet, Black Knight, being able to get the stones protected like I just referred to. Cheating out cards with Wave and having a monster 6-cost card that you just don't even have to worry about. You see the shield come up and you're good to go. She just offers such a unique thing in Snap. Dude, she's a huge hit. I've been loving deck creation with her. I think it's like brought in a new fresh air to deck building.
Oh, 100%. Like, I've absolutely loved Caiera. I've been placing her into a lot of decks, and I almost forgot what it was like to play Zoo. I know this is a bit of a tangent, but like Zoo, it was so fun to play it again. Like, it's not a combo deck. I'm not stressing about, do I pull Zabu? Do I do this? Did I get the card? Do I get the Annihilus? I wasn't stressing about any of that. I was like, oh, I have Squirrel Girl. Oh, I have this card. Ooh, I'm just throwing cards out everywhere. Blarvel, Kazar, whatever it is. I'm just playing cards. I'm playing cards, and I'm loving life. And Caiera protected them all from that damn Skillmonger, because at the end of the day, that thing ruins the dreams of Zoo players. But I will say as well, is sometimes, listen, it's a 12-card deck. And sometimes I'm like, man, but I'm really not seeing that much Killmonger. And even if I'm against a Destroy player on ladder, I'll just give him the cube and move on. So you're teching against, like, you're dedicating one card to teching against what might happen. That element of Caiera is what we have to consider as like a push factor that reduces her viability.
Yeah, okay, so here's the thing though. Outside of just the Killmonger play, the thing that's I thought we talked about it last week and it's happening. Bro, the protection on locations is just so massive. Being able to play into Death Domain, being able to play into these other locations has been... So when you're going wide with cards like Zoo, or one-drops for that matter, locations has such a big effect, right? Because if they're like limiting or if you have destroy locations, all of a sudden a deck that's very dependable is completely landlocked to 2 locations. And then that Death Domain, you're not able to do what it does well, and that's like spread wide and get power up. Because you nailed it. You're not doing combos with Zoo. It's just very dependable. It may not hit the most like power, but you're going to be getting out good stats, right? So Caiera's use for that has been probably one of my favorite things about the card. And then trying to like, guesstimate, man, like I can't tell you. I have a couple ones out there. They're playing Destroy, and I like slam the Caiera out just to like block the bullets from all the Killmonger. It feels good too. She's a safety gate for a lot of decks that aren't exactly all in on 6-cost cards or 1-cost cards, but just feels like a good tempo play. I love the 4 power too. I think it's like perfect for what she offers. Maybe that comes down. I don't know, man. I feel like she's really well made, and I think she's only going to add to Snap's future cards as well.
When it comes to like the zoo, I was actually experimenting with like a zoo controlled style deck, and what I was doing was I was actually playing Storm and Goose to try and make it be like, okay, hey, you're not gonna be able to trade with me with your big 6 drops or big 5 drops with Goose in that lane. Storm one, try to win the other. But ultimately, it was very tricky, like with blobs being what they were and everything else going on in the meta. Miss Marvel having that incredible reach. Miss Marvel's reach is what is so problematic for the zoo players, because like it's hard to compete with 15 power across the board when you're zooing, and you can't play Miss Marvel yourself because you got 1 drops everywhere, you got 2 drops everywhere, right? It's not the same fair fight. So I think that Miss Marvel, actually less than Killmonger, is currently negatively impacting zoo because you just can't compete with that power level. And even if you play something like an Echo, right, you're suddenly lacking the verticality. So anyways, very interesting ideas around how zoo can be utilized to kind of like be meta relevant, but I just don't think it's there yet. I don't know if Caiera is going to do it.
I actually think that zoo is another archetype that we have not found the deck with Caiera yet. I think people have floated the idea. They've all kind of stuck to a couple of, we'll talk about them in a second, but like the main things that Caiera works for. Bigger number means better person, right? Like people think I want the big 6-cost cards. I think that zoo ultimately, the list is out there, and I'm, we could say this about everything. I do think Miss Marvel is a great point into what you said, but even being able to play the list that I've been stewing with, that I'm about to have a video out on, is that you go with cheap 1-cost, and then you just have the tech cards. It's like a Sarah deck without the Sarah. You have decent power, but then you have the answers to what they're trying to put out on their side, right? Like that kind of feels like the ultimate place that I would, end up playing zoo. I had a great zoo deck maybe 2 months ago, right? And it was like that, it was with Jean Grey. Still kind of can work. You got the Echo in there, and then you try to Shauna, pick your best lane, Pro X. And that was really cool. Times have changed a little bit. Pro X is obviously hurting a tad bit. But I do think that there is going to be a better day and a better zoo deck to come, to where at least it's like somewhat competitive.
Now, I know this isn't specifically about Caiera, but it brought these 2 cards into the spotlight. Did you have an opportunity to test Zoo with like Dazzler and Shauna? And what was your experience with those 2 cards?
Yeah, dude, it's funny you say that, because like it made me reevaluate all the 1-drops again, right? So I was like going through them. I was like, who? Because it's funny, Zoo lists are actually kind of tight. Like once you go through what you need, you definitely want like Blue Marvel, Kazar, and then you have Caiera now. And then you're like, okay, so which ones drops? Naturally, you want to try to be like, okay, Sunspot and Nebula have to make the list, right? Like, that's how you think to it. I think with Shauna, you have to utilize her randomness to effect. That's why I loved the Pro X build that I had, because you would slam these down, and then you could pick a lane to take advantage of. I think Shauna ultimately is best with something like Jean Grey or Dazzler, because what does she do well? What is the one thing she does outside of randomness is that she is effectively the best way to fill your board the fastest. Like with decent stats and decent cards, Jean Grey, the way that you play Jean Grey, the way that you make her great, one of my favorite cards for so long now is that you fill up your Jean Grey side, but then you have ways to get out of it or ways to boost it and have surprise, right? So Ant-Man, Nightcrawler, that exists, and I think Shauna is a great way to kind of help this out. And then Dazzler. The issue with Dazzler that I found, and it's great, it works, I think it's cool, is that like you're doing so much for a 3-8. And 3-8's a good stat line, don't get me wrong. I just feel like ultimately she still is getting replaced with like, oh, I'd rather have a Sunspot I could sneak out early. I'd rather have one other 1-drop. She has worked in the list, but I feel like I also could theoretically replace her, but she's not terrible.
No, she's not terrible. And like, it's been one of those situations I'm like, do I cut Dazzler in favor of like even Martyr, right? But then like, if I'm playing Martyr and Dazzler together, I'm trying to block up all the lanes so Martyr can't move. We need that vertical power. It's so right. Like what you said prior was correct. Zoo lists are surprisingly tight. Mine, I was actually cutting Iceman. I couldn't play Iceman. I had to cut him. And but I was running Goose and some of that control element stuff. But like Dazzler and Shauna, like I ultimately ended up cutting because like even with like if you think about it, you play Dazzler on turn 3, turn 4 Kazar, turn 5 Blue Marvel. When are you zooing? Like when are you playing your cards, right? Turn 6, that's when you're playing your cards, but you haven't drawn anything, right? It's been really interesting to try and make zoo work, and I think you're right. I think it's close. I don't want to give up on it yet because I think it's close.
I won like what if Dazzler was like a 2/7? I know it's more than Maximus. I get that, but like you're having to like fill every lane. Like that's hard. It's a hard thing to do. It's like is it the 3 cost? I don't know. I don't know what it is. Because I used to try to do a lot of cool things with her. Like I used to try to do Dazzler, Omega Red, Onslaught, and then you like have this huge, surge in power, and there's some cool things you can do. But again, it's like gimmicks. You're gonna win a couple conquests maybe, but it's not super competitive. So I'm excited to see the future of Zoo, and I can tell you it'll be coming next month. I think there's a card, Block Swan. I forgot which one has it, but all 1-cost cards cost 0 for the next turn of play, and I think that potentially we could be seeing like a Sarah Miracle Zoo kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's actually worth noting here. Like we've been focusing so much on Zoo because it's so exciting to play that archetype again, not in the beginning stages of the game, but where Caiera has really progressed as a top tier option. Surprise, surprise, it's been Sheenot. Sheenot has genuinely benefited from the addition of Caiera. You got the deck on the screen here. Currently running a 59% win rate. Sunspot, Nebula, Misty Knight. We're running 3/3 drops to get protected by Caiera. You have Shocker. Some people are cutting Shocker in favor of Cosmo. You have Magic, Caiera, Cyclops, High Evolutionary, Leech, She-Hulk, the Hulk, and then finally the Infinite. This deck is one of the decks that's most commonly using Caiera to good effectiveness, and hey, would you be surprised, No Cozy, that I've been playing a hell of a lot of She-Not lately, and I gotta say she fits absolutely perfectly. Having that Sunspot sitting there with confidence, knowing that it's not going to get disrupted. Sometimes you got to play that She-Hulk early when the things don't quite line up the way you want them to. There's even locations at times, or if your Shocker hits your Hulk, you can play Hulk out on 5 and not be worried about getting Shang-Chi'd. So I think it has been a tremendous addition to the She-Not archetype.
Yeah, and I think she's really cool in that archetype because she also limits it as well. Like, I don't think High Evo needed it necessarily, but what I like about it is, like, I like the idea that if you play her on 3, you're not being able to skip energy, and then it doesn't help out your bigger cards, right? Or, like, your Sunspot. It conflicts with Magic's cost, so then you have, like, that in the equation. Like, I do feel like it's more balanced than people actually think, like, as far as, like, what that deck's trying to do in the ultimate. The 6-cost protection is great and all, but dude, it's easily for me. It's protecting your Nebula, your Sunspot, and your Misty Knight is fantastic. It's so good. It feels so good to cut armor and Cosmo potentially 2 cards with just 1 replacement. Now we were experimenting with like Skaar in there, and it can work. But yeah, I think even just keeping Leech at his core too. That's what that deck does well as in addition to it. Yeah, dude, I definitely such a great home for Caiera because it's the ultimate deck that does exactly what she's doing. 6 and 1s, right? Just really utilizing the best of both with Thanos. It's kind of it's both of those together.
To the dismay, though, of many people in the Marvel Snap population, High Evolutionary's back. High Evolutionary's coming back. I felt like I was the only one playing it, but it is storming back with the addition of Caiera, and this deck absolutely is showcasing why. Now, before we move on to our next topic, there is one last thing I wanted to talk about Caiera, because I've seen this conversation come up quite a bit. And that is the comparison between Caiera and Armor. Now, Armor's a 2/3, Caiera a 3/4. Armor is competitively statted for the 2-cost. Caiera is like substatted. All right, substatted. What would we say? Is 3/5 the standard 3-cost?
I think it's like, even if it's 3/4, it's the upside of what it brings typically. So like 3/5 probably though, and then it can get higher. Yeah, 3/4 can get higher. Yeah.
But how do you like draw the line between the use of Armor and Caiera? Because I think this has been a very interesting.
I mean, I think it's there's a lot more competitively than people might think with Armor's advantage of just being able to tempo Armor out on 2, and the difference of that, and being able to protect an entire lane and or counter with it. Caiera, people thought only affecting you could have been bad, but it's actually, you can't stop a destroy deck if that gets hot. I think right now, Evo and Thanos are all over the place. because it is Caiera week. Like, people are like really pissed about it, but you gotta think about it. A Nihilist brought junk decks all week. Caiera's gonna bring out 1 and 6. It's just gonna happen. And if they're already competitive decks, like we skipped over Thanos, dude. Thanos is a stupid place right now. Stupid competitive place with insane flexibility and finally utilizing Thanos' best kit, his Avidity Stones, right? Armor is definitely going to have the place over Caiera in certain decks, right? So a great example of this is in a deck where you're trying to cheat out these bigger cards that aren't the 6 cost. I don't know about you, man, but I was trying to do like Devil Dino and Thanos, which I still did, but to not have that safety blanket anymore, you're like, oh my god, it could die. It could be extinct again. Whereas like the 6 costs feel a lot safer, and you get to play armor for cheaper. Caiera's advantage is that you want to play her typically with Skaar, and with Skaar, you're cheating out big cards via Lockjaw. You know what I mean? So like that has its own thing, and then more like tempo value play is armor.
Absolutely, and I think that it can't be understated how valuable the counterplay that armor can have against destroy players against those types of matchups. When destroy can often be like upwards of 9% of the meta, so I think that it does shine in those regards. But ultimately, I think Caiera has been a very strong addition to Snap. Cozy, first impressions and final first impressions star rating from you.
Yeah, I think Caiera I got at a 4-star rating, and I've got Skaar at a 3, probably a 3.
Yeah, I agree there. I think Caiera is about 4.5, and I think Skaar is probably 3.5. I'm a little higher on both. I think Skaar eventually will be a solid 4. I think we're missing like 1 or 2 cards, and that card's going to be flying for sure. And that brings us, Cozy, to one of our absolute favorite things that we do on a weekly basis, and that is the Snapchat mailbag. And if you are interested in having your question answered by Cozy Snap and I, whether it be about Marvel Snap or life in general, ask it down below. Type mailbag, ask your question, and we'll get right to it in the next episode. Now, first one comes from Fatal Nightmare. What are your thoughts if they reworked Kang to still manipulate time, but instead of rewinding the current turn, make him a 4 cost with some power, but with the ability to skip turn 5 and immediately go to turn 6?
I feel like there's always a Kang question in here. Like, I love it. I think Kang, just like in the MCU, is probably dead. I like the idea, though. I think that's definitely fun. I've heard so many Kang ideas because I think people want him to be relevant in some way, shape, or form. Like, I've started to see him pop up in, like, Loki decks or whatever. I just don't know what you end up doing with Kang, and it's not definitely not a bad idea, man. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I've thought about so many different versions of Kang. Like, what if like you play him and you get to pick like one of 3 random cards? You get to become a variant of a card in their deck. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? Like, you get 3 options. Like, oh, I can be Eliath, I can be Maximus, or I can be Ronan. Who do I want to be right now? That I think that'd be kind of cool. That was an idea I had. But the other thing I thought about was I've been unironically playing Kang for the last 2 weeks. Honestly, I was playing this ramp shell and I had put Kang in it to Kang Snap and stuff like that. And honestly, every single time I won a game with a Kang Snap, I felt like an absolute Chad. I was like, yeah, you just got beat by a Kang Snap. I was losing. Why would you get scared? But yeah, he feels super underwhelming at 5 cost. I wonder if like you even just added just let him draw a card anytime he's played because it replaces him. Because usually you want to play him on the turn you draw him if it's turn 5 or 6 because it replenishes himself, right? But ultimately, Kang's been in a really weird spot. If you did not buy Kang with your 6,000 tokens when he was released, you did a good job and you saved yourself some tokens.
Yeah, and I will say this. If draft ends up being a good spot for like resources and like it's like a competitive mode and like we play it a lot and there's good things to do, Kang is good in draft mode. Like, Kang is very good in draft mode because of the, like, there's no synergy, right? And he kind of brings this, like, bluff. You don't have to worry about them having Brood, Silver Surfer in draft mode most of the time. And so I do, as a person who's played a lot of draft, you have too, I think Kang would have a spot there. But yeah, I've seen other cases of, like, can you make Kang be played really, I don't know the energy cost, but you would get to so he redoes that last turn. So let's say, and I don't know how you would do it with the location, but I like the idea of the final location. If you don't like it, you play Kang. It could change that. Both players get a draw. If you don't like your draw, you could also use Kang, and it just manipulates time, and he gets another draw. You could end up hurting yourself because your opponent got a bad draw, and then you give him a good one. I kind of like that aspect. Dude, there's a million ways to talk about Kang. I expect more in Snapchat mailbag, but I like it.
Our next question comes from The Moving Picture Show. Says, love the show, guys, and Happy New Year. One feature I would love to see added is a mode to practice decks against bots. I hate to tell you, buddy, that's ranked mode. I can't tell you how many times I made a new deck to realize that certain combo doesn't work the way I thought it would, and now I'm out 2 cubes. I think this would be a great addition that could help new players get a hang of the game. What are your thoughts, and what do you think the odds of this being added to the game are?
I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I think someone asked this to Glenn, and essentially, Conquest Proving Grounds has kind of been this for they've stopped testing mode development because this has been a way to test, and it's a great way to test. I actually don't think a lot of people utilize it. I know, Alex, you do a lot, like if you're ever trying a cheeky build out. Don't get me wrong, I think it'd be great. I just think with the resources available, they're going to probably end up killing that.
I do agree that Proving Grounds is like the correct answer to that question. If you want to test something just purely with no stakes, Proving Grounds is where to go. If you can deal with the tilt of people not snapping back, like that's the one thing about Proving Grounds. Like I often play Proving Grounds where I'll snap, they won't. I'll win, I'll just leave. Like I'll just be like, okay, dude, like you can get the ticket. Like I just want to play. But at the end of the day, like I do think that what Cozy said is correct. I think that Proving Grounds has ultimately taken the spot of that testing kind of environment. Although like many games do testing environments really well. This is dating me, but when I used to play Dota Underlords and Auto Builders, I used to do they had a practice mode where you can actually set up board combinations to test the combinations. You see this in Smash Brothers training modes, right? Fighting games often do this kind of stuff. Yep. In Snap, is it as required? Probably not, especially when you have a small team with limited development resources. It's probably prudent that they would leave the Proving Grounds to do exactly what you've suggested there.
So I've got one on here, question for the mailbag coming from Mika10, and they asked, do you just ever throw completely random cards to your deck to throw off your opponents, especially in the topper, that's the word there, parts of competitive play? I like this. I think this is good. I mean, I think it's, I don't know if I'm ever like, you know what, I'm going to put in an angel. They'll never see what's coming. I think they'll just snap on me and say this fool. But I think it's, another thing, if you get ahead of the curve on some of this, like Alex and I, if we ever discover something, we're usually just bringing it up on the Snapchat or whatever. But like, for a week straight, I was playing Mobius and I was really getting that effect. And it's like, okay, I screwed him up there. Pure randomness, Alex? I don't know. You would be, if anyone's doing it, it's you.
Yeah, listen, on my climb towards infinite, I think I was at like 97. We decided to put Kang and Agatha in a deck together and say, Auto Builder, give me the best deck. And let's just say it did not give me the best deck. It gave me this Ronin deck with like no synergistic cards, Kang, Agatha. It was so awful. Quinjet for no reason. And I'm like, all right, we're doing it. Turn 1 snap. We're taking it to the house here. And no, it played horribly. It was awful. But you know what? It was a ton of fun to do. And sometimes, yes, my opponents had no idea what was going on. Zero idea going on. When I hit them with the turn 6 Ronin, when I had played Quinjet, Kang, and Agatha and all this other random stuff there, then yeah, they were surprised. I got to tell you, they weren't expecting to have to dump their hand on turn 6.
Yeah, the most I'll get with that is like, instead of trying to do like Darkhawk to get Skaar out, this week I did Medusa with Hulkbuster. And, people would like probably see that play and they're like, I'm going to snap on this. What the hell is this guy doing? Especially because it's the first, 2 to 3 turns of the game. They're like, what is this guy doing? And then I have a 4 Skaar that I can play next turn. Like you could do things like that are maybe not like statistic-wise the best thing to do, but it works with the synergy package you're trying to, accomplish.
And is it crazy to play Marvel Snap for fun? Is it crazy to play the game for fun? If you want to brew some absolutely intoxicated garbage and just take it to the house there, you got to do it. Take it to Infinity Con, take it to Gold. Get her done, man. Brew something crazy. Put Martyr and Kang in a deck and say, auto brew me something and take it.
Yeah.
That's at the end of the day, isn't that why we're here? We're having fun, right?
Absolutely. I think that's often lost. But yeah, man, have fun with it. Play a random card. Don't put in, the worst card in the game. Like, don't try to make Angel work or whatever. But cards like M'Baku with like C2, yeah, it's not the best C2 deck, but good God, are you having a good time doing it? So yeah, definitely could do that.
The next question comes from a Buck guy, and it reads, I feel Second Ender doesn't give enough attention to the quality of life updates. For example, needing to click the favorites button on the mobile device every time to feature your filtered variants. Surprise, it's on PC too, and it's been driving me insane. Yeah. Anyways, instead of focusing on rolling out as many cards as possible, I would be in favor of 2 new cards a month to focus more on the small stuff that makes things a little less clunky. Curious on your thoughts.
Yeah, I like this. I think they wouldn't stack up that much where we'd like have to limit, card releases. But in other games I've played, like 1 month out of the year, maybe even 2 if you need it, it was like quality of life month, right? Where like they stopped production on all the other stuff and they either made up on past promises. So like, let's use first edition badges here, whatever. And then they just stomped all the bugs in a huge bug fix. They do okay with bugs, but there's times where they'll like do a couple bugs. I'm like, I never see that. Whereas like the favorites bug is driving me wild. It's just so stupid at this point. Like, why haven't we fixed it? So I agree. We need like a quality of life week, maybe per month, whatever it is. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I still want the cards to come out, and it's just they just expand their team slightly. It's easy to forget the second owner is a small team. But one thing I will say though is I'm glad they fixed the lockjaw bug, because we've been playing a lot of lockjaw. Remember when lockjaw cards used to stack and you couldn't even tell what came out? That was like that for like 4 months.
Forever. To 4 months. I think it was there for like a year, man. It was there for like, launched to like, I think July. It was so long, like extremely long. Very much, you know, I think there are, even though it may not be the most common one, there are visual bugs that like have to change and they need to get to those first. But yeah, I think this actually coming patch has a good bug list too.
All right. And our final question comes from Evil Greg, and it reads, if you're to create snap cards of each other, what would they do?
This is what I'm talking about. This is a good, this is the questions I live for over here. Great one, Evil Greg. Why are you evil? Oh my gosh. I thought we did this before, or maybe it was like if we were a snap card, what would they do? So definitely, ooh, okay. So here's my thing, right? So we're going to go, I could go off, you know, Canada. I'm going to go off of, Costco instead, right? So what do you get at Costco? You get big mass bulk of things, right? So for Alex, if you play a deck with only one type of cost in it, the hell, this is ridiculous. You could play Alex at 0 cost if you draw him for 20 power. But every single card has to be the exact same cost.
So basically it's a zoo deck with a 0/20 at the end?
It's pretty bad, but yeah, I kind of like it.
So I can't even outpace Blob?
Probably not. You're probably going to suffer. And, you know, I could go with Canadians and you just like give them free wins or something. But like, what do you get?
For Cozy, it's actually DLC. You buy a Cozy pack, and then when you unlock the pack, it automatically guarantees that your next split will be inked with Crackle.
Yeah, dude, right. Although I've had a couple bad luck streaks off stream and stuff. But yeah, that's a damn good question. I'm going to maybe follow up on that in the next Snapchat with even a more not on the spot answer.
There's another good one too. There's another one. Okay, Cozy is a 3/6 that if you get a haircut by the end of the game, he gets +4.
Ooh, okay. How do you get a haircut? Is there another card that is involved in that?
Someone has to have a sword to give you a haircut. So like, I don't know, Meek holds a sword. Maybe Meek gives you a haircut.
When equipment comes out, we can have Alex glasses. Alex glasses as equipment. Those gamer glasses, dude, that's at least like +5 power immediately, and just health.
See your opponent's hand,
and your doctor's happy about it. Oh, okay, I like it. Hey, write these down, Marvel Snap devs. We know you're listening. Dude, that was a good one to end it on. I love that. That was a good one.
Absolutely. And guys, thank you so much for joining us on this week's edition of the Snapchat. Hope we had a great stay with us, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Snapchat.